This conference will now be recorded.
So I highly recommend you guys to start watching this video and experience what it takes to create a thumbnail sketches and then create a lot of those sketches. You'll get a good sense of what a thumbnail sketch looks like and what's not a thumbnail sketch in this video. The second technique I really like is the splash and sketch. So in this case, he takes a plain piece of paper and then he just dabs a bunch of colors, and he lets it dry, and then he adds this thin outlines to the sketches, and then followed by that he just adds this shades that you see there to give this highlights, and then he also adds this additional darker tones to see to show kind of shadows like this, the shadows that is shown here, right? So watch this video, you'll get a good sense of, this is a very interesting style where you might not have a lot of time to add individual colors. You can start with a plain thing and then you can start uh, second. Yeah. So the third one is the vertical tilt is a very interesting sketch exercise that he shows. Typically, if you look at the buildings, you kind of have those buildings which are like standing up straight. But vertical tilt is something that all the walls are kind of not straighted, but it's kind of pointing towards one perspective on the top. So that's a good exercise that he shows. I highly recommend you guys to take a look at that particular video. And fourth video is about perspectives. There's tons and tons of content on YouTube that talks about what perspectives are. This one, he kind of uh, takes an example and then walks you guys through that content. So do take a look at that video. The fifth video is very interesting for people who are moderately experienced urban sketchers. What happens for these sketchers is that you tend to build a lot of sketches, but you don't use a lot of dark tonal values. And this is one example where you want to start trying going darker shades. And he talks about some of the common mistakes that experienced urban sketchers do is to not do darker sketches. So use that as an example. Watch that video. The second urban sketcher that I want to talk about is Marc Taro Holmes. Here, he's the famous sketcher, and he is also has this thing called 100 week 100 people challenge that he and Liz they do it together. They do it together, and they also have a website. He also has a website called Citizen Sketchers, and there are three interesting techniques that he does, which is very interesting. The first one is called as the dot plot technique. So you can see that how he takes a building and then he creates dotted markers across the page, and then he slowly builds and constructs that particular imagery. And this is a very important thing that you guys can try, and it helps in terms of composition so that your images doesn't get too small or it doesn't go beyond the screen. So this helps a lot, and I provided a link to the entire article that he talks about this particular thing. And after he does this is where he kind of adds more color to it. So that's a dot plot technique. I want you guys to go and read that article and then internalize it. The second one I want to talk about is the broken silhouettes and negative shapes. That's a video that I provided there, that's sketching with brush, where he talks about, it's a very short video of close to 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, but he talks about how do you take a simple object and then uh, draw broken silhouettes and also the negative shapes. And he also gives examples of how to do one with the lion. So do take a look at that video. It's quite a valuable thing to try it out. The third takeaway from his skill is he calls it tea, milk, and honey. It's primarily what is the consistency of the paint that he really uses when he does his presentations. So Joseph Zubik is another fantastic watercolor artist. He has this a circle where he talks about butter, milk, and various consistency. He has this circle. He talks about it. It's along the same lines. So you can see that he draws a thin line and then he does the tea shade, and then the milk is a thicker consistency of the same thing that he does. And honey is a much, once the whole page dries, honey is a much thicker consistency of the same paint that he uses. So do take a look at his articles around that. You'll get a good sense of what that means. I'll just take a quick pause to see if folks are able to hear me and able to catch up with me so far.
Yeah, we can
Yes.
hear you, sir.
Srinath,
Yes.
yes,
Okay,
but can you go a bit slow?
okay,
Yeah, I can hear.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
okay. Thanks.
I'm good with the page too.
Okay. All right. So the next urban sketcher that I want to talk about is Judy. Judy is a very interesting sketcher in the sense that I like the way what she does with her sketches. And she's from Israel, Lebanon. And I've been following her for quite some time. The three key takeaways that I like about her style is her lines are so clean and nice. It's very simple, thin lines, but I really love the way she draws her lines, and the perspectives are so simple and nice. And then she is also mastered simplifying things. So she tries to take her medium to a really small size, like thumbnail pages, and try to sketch it, which forces her as well as you, when you try it yourself, you try to say what are the most simplest set of elements that you want to sketch is what you want to do. So to give you guys a sense of as to what her style looks like, you can see how some of the examples that she does. So I really like the lines that she uses. It's pretty much black pen that she uses to draw the lines. And even the picture on the right, you can see it's a complex scene, but she kind of uses very simple, nice perspectives when she draws even this particular building that you see out there. Lines are really nice. Here's another example of an image, two images in the mall, and you can see how well she has used a single ink to illustrate her purpose. At the same time, her proportions, everything looks so beautiful. In this case of a mall window, that you can see how this lines are all converging, and then the use of these lines, and also the different shades that she has used here kind of shows you the element of depth that she has given, as you can see how things converge here. This is a beautiful sketch that she has done, right? That's an example. And in this screen, I really wanted to show you some of the thumbnail sketches that she does, which is really cool. You can see how small the piece of paper that she uses in terms of sketching. So this kind of really pushes herself to draw things which are really basic to the elements of the scene that she's seeing, and she tries to capture it. And this is also a technique that you guys can follow and try, where you try to sketch things as little as possible and minimal as possible. For starters, you can even try to copy her sketches and try to see if you are able to replicate the similar straight lines that she uses. And then once you hone in on the technique, you can say, how can I apply this to other scenes that I'm noticing around me? So the next person I want to talk about is Simone. She is the founder of the Urban Sketches of Manchester, and I really like her style for two reasons. One is her lines are really thin, and I love the perspectives that she does, and then the minimal color palette that she uses. So you can see in these two sketches as an example where the pen strokes are really thin. So it's she uses a micron or a pen or whatever medium that she uses, but her lines are pretty much thin. You can see a couple of other urban sketchers where they tend to go a little darker in terms of the windows and other places, but mostly Simone, I've never seen her go and kind of, he doesn't go and darken all the places. She's primarily, it's all thin lines that she uses across the board, and the splash of colors is just perfect that she uses. here are a few more examples of using very minimal color. She doesn't complicate things. I really love how she keeps it really simple. But the beauty is in the lines that she does, the ton of vertical lines that she uses to capture the images. Is beautiful. And also, I love the way she does trees. The trees is just absolutely fantastic to see how she draws the trees here. She keeps it so simple, and it kind of, you can see that the trees kind of look transparent, and you can see the buildings behind the scene. So these are the various things that you can really try in some of your sketches to see how it comes out. The next person is Felix. I just really love his style. So I've been following him for quite some time. And he's a prolific sketcher. He has written multiple books on urban sketching and also different sketching topics that he deeply cares about. One of the things that I really got out of after observing Felix is I used to be kind of trying to get things as realistic as possible. Felix is one of the first person I really felt that I can really loosen up my style of sketching. So especially when he does facial portraits, when he draws portraits of people, he keeps it so simple and easy, but at the same time, the sketches are so beautiful actually. And the colors also, he just places the colors at the right place, so it's not too much or too little. I really love the style that he does. And once I started doing it, I kind of felt comfortable doing a lot of these kind of style sketches. And then later on, I started doing complicated. But for folks who are doing this for the first time, they feel intimidated by the drawing portraits. I highly recommend you to take a look at his style. It really helps you guys to see how we can simplify things and draw simple portraits. And the urban sketch is also really good. He keeps it really loose, but he knows where exactly he has to put the right elements in terms of the colors that he wants to dab, and then the places where you want to leave it empty. So it's just a fantastic sketcher to follow and then observe his style and try it out. Again, this is a simple ballpoint sketch that you can see how simple it is, but it shows he has a real sense of what that you can get a sense of what the location looks like. Okay, the next sketcher is Yuki. She's an urban sketcher from Russia, and she is quite actively involved in urban sketching Pittsburgh group and several other urban sketching groups. And her color, one of the interesting things that you'll immediately realize as soon as you go to her Instagram page is her sketches are extremely vibrant. It's just beautifully vibrant colors that she uses, and also the way she mixes the colors. So here's an example of just a few sketches that she did. And an interesting thing that I have seen about Yuki, I haven't seen in other people, is most of the people, when I look at the source of light, I see that the folks either have the source of light on the right side or left side, or mostly in that case. Yuki is one of the interesting persons I've seen where the source of light is behind the object, and the shadows fall towards you. It looks as if it approaches you. So that's a very interesting style. The second thing I want to call out is even the shadows that you see there. It's quite interesting, the melody of colors that she has. So even in this case, the amount of blue and violet that she uses, the mix and matches that she does, and then even here the shadows of the cycle that you see here, how she uses a combination of blue and green, so which is just fascinating. So take a look at her Instagram page and observe how she does this. She even posts images of the students who has done some of her workshop. So do take a look at to compare and contrast to see how it looks, and then try it out in your own images, some of the things that you wanted to try it out. The next sketcher that I want to talk about is Ian Fennelly. Ian is an amazing artist, and you can see as soon as I show his sketches, or you can go and check out his Instagram page. You can distinctly find out as soon as you see a sketch, you can say it's Ian Fennelly's sketch. It's just, sketches are just amazing. There are two things that really stands out in Ian Fennelly sketches is the deliberate distortion technique that he kind of does. is what I observed. And he has a method to his madness. He has like this process that he follows, which he talks about in some of his YouTube videos. So if you search Enfriendly on YouTube, there are other fellow urban sketchers who have recorded this session. So do take a look at it. You will be able to find out. Many of us might not have the luxury to attend urban sketching symposium in the past, or might not have the uh, be able to pay to attend his sketches. But if you do take an effort to watch some of his interviews, you'll be able to quickly find out the kind of techniques that he uses. So he follows a process that you can learn out of it. So you can see examples of how he has taken simple buildings and he's kind of distorted it. And he kind of uses sketch pens to draw the very thin outlines, loose outlines, and then he slowly on top of it, he goes and fills out the darker shades that you see here, and then he draws the bigger images. After he draws the bigger images, then he goes and he uses a combination of watercolors as well as he uses a combination of sketch pens to draw these things. And then once he does this, then he uses his pen to go and darken many of these things. He adds a lot of smaller details in terms of the pebbles that you see here, or the lines on the windows that you see here. And the primarily, if you see most of his windows or doors, you can see that they are heavily darkened. So it kind of gives you a lot of interesting depth. And you can also notice that the cross hatches that he uses here, which kind of shows the shading that happens, right? So you can see that how he uses a different set of techniques where the lines are very distorted, the bigger objects are all distorted, but he places the colors, and then how he slowly brings his sketches. So if you watch some of his presentations, then you'll be able to easily understand this, and then observe some of the drawings that he has done. The next person I want to talk about is Manali. So we're fortunate to have Manali also in the call. So it's a very short notice. Thanks, Manali, for joining. So Manali is in the call. So I've been following Manali for quite some time, and I really love the way she does her still life sketches, the vendor calls, the buildings, and the people sketches that she does. So it was kind of Monali. It was kind of quite hard to find out more information about you. I haven't seen any interviews or anything about you, but these are the three things I personally felt it stood out for me when I started observing your sketches. Number one is that even though this, if you go to Monali's Instagram, there are places where you can see that she has the sketch that she did in the front and then the image on the background. And one thing that strikes out is also some of the challenges that we as urban sketches face is your scene is too complex. You need to simplify your scene, and you can get a real sense of how you can take the right part of the scene which really captures your attention, and then go in detail about it. So I felt that Molali's sketches are really good at that. She picks a really smaller scope to draw and does a really good job on doing that to a detail. The second one is the elements and the details. I'll show you some few examples which stood out for me. Um, and the last one is the color splashes, whites and shades. So you can see she posts a lot of this still life sketches in our Instagram. I really love this one. It shows examples of what the still life looks like, the background and then the foreground, and the mix of colors that she uses. Even in the simple turnip case, that you can see how it has a mix of the purple, the yellow, and the browns, burnt sienna, and the various things. And then you can see how the shades are used. You can see pretty much you can just compare and contrast in all these things. The shades that are used in this thing, and then the source lighting that you can see how this piece of whiteness that is left out, that's to show what the source of light is. So highly encourage you guys to try it out, copy some of these things that is posted on our website, and then try it out. Monali, you want to add anything to this that comes out in mind? You want to share?
Hi, Srinath. First of all,
I want to congratulate you for this wonderful presentation that you're doing, and kudos to you for putting in so much of work to put all of this together. And I'm, what can I say? I'm humbled. I'm highly honored that you included me in these stalwarts. And okay, now I can answer the question. What was your question again?
My question was, I really love the way you do the still lifes. These are based on my observations, but are there things that you want to talk about? How do you approach the still lifes that you see here?
I'm still not very clear on that question, but I'll try to answer that. I pick up subjects, anything, especially these still lives are mainly done during this lockdown because there's little scope to go outside. And normally what inspires me in a still life is the play of light and shadow, which is why you see the shadows are quite pronounced in most of my still lifes. And I think my natural tendency is that if I see the pink or the magenta in the turnip, then I use more of it, I pronounce more of it in my sketch. So maybe in the photograph, one has to zoom in and see. In reality, one may not see that magenta is pronounced, but if I can see that tinge, I will pronounce it. I will make it louder in my sketch. And also the other thing is I try and use pure pigments. So especially because since most of my work is in watercolors, it will eventually, when it dries out, it will eventually become uh, less brighter. It'll dull out. So my suggestion is that use direct colors fearlessly. They will tone down when they dry down in watercolors.
Excellent. Thanks. I think that's very useful actually. Yeah, it's just fascinating to hear the thought process that goes behind this one. So, and I could clearly see even some of the sketches. I kind of flipped to the next one where you kind of pick this particular this thing, and then even if the smallest element of color that you notice it, you kind of amplify it in your sketches. I can clearly see that one. I really love the way you do that. And
Thanks.
yeah, and also this one I particularly like the fact that how you kind of pick just that particular this particular just small monument that you can see in front of you, and the playfulness of the colors that's surrounding here. And what really adds beauty is the white spaces that you leave for the pillars. I really love the way it's done.
Thanks.
Yeah. And even in the second
That's also because I'm seeing it in a new perspective as you're talking, but it's also because sometimes the scene there are lots of things to draw. It's quite complex, and I know I would not finish it in time. So then generally I would focus on the element that first inspired me to sketch that scene.
Yep. Nice. Awesome. And this is the third one I want to talk about. The elements are distinct. So when I said when I said earlier that the some of the things that your style that really caught my attention is the elements are distinct. What I mean by that is simple things like, for example, when I look at your sketches, for example, the buckets that you see here and the cloths that you see here. A challenge for me as well as the others I've seen is they try to tend it draw too small. One of the things I noticed in your sketches, you kind of like just like the your vehicle car rear view mirror, the objects look much bigger, right? So something like that. So some of the objects, by enlarging a little bit, it just adds so much roundness and beauty to the sketches that you do, is something that I distinctly noticed in your style.
That's yeah, well, that's yeah, okay. The bucket was removed by the time I took the photograph. So, but the bucket was
Yeah.
quite big.
Yeah. So again, this is another example of the splash of colors that the choices that you use is just so beautiful, and the pure pigment that you mentioned, I think that definitely adds a lot of richness to the color contrast that we see here. And also the white spaces that you use, especially for the tree trunks or even for the steps that you use here, is just it's just really nice. I hope folks who are watching here can, for example, the trees that you see here, it's the trunks are all pretty much white spaces. So typical tendency is to just go and draw the trunks, but this is a beautiful example of how you can do the negative spaces around the tree trunk rather than drawing the tree trunk. Really enjoyed watching this, some of the things that you've done here.
Thanks, Srinath.
Yep, thanks.
And if anybody else also, I don't mean to interrupt you, but after the presentation is over, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. Yeah, okay.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll at the tail end of the presentation, I'll go back to your ones, and then we'll take questions. Yep.
Sure.
The next one I wanted, sketcher I want to briefly introduce you guys to is Paul Wang. Paul is from Singapore. They're fantastic set of sketchers out of Singapore, and Paul is one of the very interesting. He has a very interesting different style. You can go and take a look at it. Unlike similar to other sketchers, he does a lot of standard sketches of how the buildings looks, the different monuments or shops or coffee shops that he goes. But he's not afraid of experimenting with shapes, colors, and layers. What I mean by that is you can go and check out some of his examples where he goes to a coffee shop and see things around, and he kind of adds a little bit of abstractness to the sketches that he does, and how he kind of overlays things. For example, if you look at this particular piece of cup, it's kind of deliberately left half, and then you can see how this particular table cloth behind the scene kind of overlaps on top of the plate. So the overlapping objects is just beautiful things that he does. The abstractness, I really love it. And the colors that he does is just fantastic. You can go to his Instagram page and you can see how he gives swatches of different colors that he mixes and matches. You can get a sense of how to do it. And then he also has small examples that he shows, which I also recommend you guys to try it out. It kind of helps you guys to understand what it takes to mix and match colors and what kind of things that you can get out of it. So that's a quick whirlwind tour about all the sketchers that I felt that those are interesting things that these guys do. But it's also important there are many folks in this presentation who are new to this Urban Sketchers Hyderabad group. We have sketchers in this group, Urban Sketchers Hyderabad, for quite some time. I thought this is also a good opportunity to share with you guys who are some of the sketchers who have been with us for quite some time and do some phenomenal work. So for starters, I want to, these are the two people who run this Hyderabad Urban Sketches group. It's just fantastic things that they do. Like Faraz is like the PR machine for us, and he's been with this group for quite some time, and it's just phenomenal. The energy that he brings to this, all the sketching events that we do, and then the connections that he has is just fantastic. So if you have to go and find a monument, he has the right set of connections and he makes it happen. So this is fantastic to have for us. And Abbas, I would say he is like the glue of this whole group. So he is extremely quiet. You can't hear him talk much, but trust me, the kind of ton of background work that goes to make events happen is not trivial. So Abbas is like the silent hero behind the scenes who get things done for us. So these two folks do a fantastic amount of job behind the scene for us to make some of the events possible. Anil is just stands out among all our sketchers. He's just a prolific watercolor artist, and he works for a gaming company. He does a lot of sketches. So be it his pencil sketches or the watercolor sketches, is just fantastic. So he has given a couple of demos for us. There's also his YouTube channel his Facebook channel where he posted a lot of his videos. So I highly encourage you guys to take a look at his work. And he's also one of the most, I felt, is like the underrated artist. So it's just when I go to his Instagram page and I see only 10 or 40 different likes compared to my daughter who doesn't have any postings, but she has so many likes. It just feels like he's one of the most underrated artists. He's just phenomenally talented artist that we have in our group. So fortunate to have him as part of our Urban Sketches Hyderabad. And Ishak, folks have known him for quite some time. He's one of founding members of the Urban Sketches of Hyderabad. It takes quite a bit of effort to bring put a group together and keep it up and live and to running. So it's just fantastic that Ishak has brought urban sketching to Hyderabad, and he continues to support that amount of time that is available for him. And I also love his style of sketching where he uses a mix of both ink as well as pen and colors. So do take a look at his Facebook page for the work that he does. Dr. Neeraj, though his profession is from doctor, it's kind of his fascination, his love for art kind of shows off when he comes and attends the events. He's just prolific sketching when it comes to drawing with his pen, and he does really fast sketching. So I just love the fact that he, the kind of style that he uses and sketches. An interesting story is when I joined urban sketching at a very early stage, like 2-3 years ago, this group, one of the things that really stood out for me, what Neeraj did is for his all the doctors' college reunion, one of the things he did is he took all the members, all the school mates that who was studied with him, and he did a big sketch of each one of them, and he posted it for as part of the reunion. That still vividly stands out in my memory, the work that he did. So it's just a fantastic person to have in our group. The other person I want to call out is Kanchan. Kanchan is just a phenomenal artist. She doesn't, she dares to try to experiment a lot of things. She just loves playing with a lot of medium. She has a wonderful studio at her home, and she coaches and trains a lot of people. Even though she coaches and trains a lot of people and she knows a lot about sketching and work, she still considers herself as a student. She goes through a lot of classes herself to keep learning her skills. So every time she joins the urban sketching events, she just brings a lot of energy to the group. Kalmesh is another fantastic artist that we have in our group, and he works for a gaming company and animation company, and he is really good at watercolors. And one of the things that stands out in Kalmesh work is he's just very good with ballpoint dot sketching. So some of his works is just fantastic that you should take a look at it, his Facebook page where he posts. And Shubhashri has been with the group for quite some time. Just love the way she does sketching of the food illustrations that she does. She just basically an illustrator, just love to do a lot of illustration work. And not just the illustration work, but she also believes a lot on the food and zero waste movement, and which kind of reflects on the work that she does. Arvind is another artist who regularly joins in our group, and he is just a fantastic when it comes to drawing portraits, and he has grown long with our group, and he's a regular participant. Do take a look at some of the works that he does. And we have Maithili also in this group, who has been who has experienced urban sketcher, who has joined recently our group, but she's quite well connected with other members of the urban sketching community out there. And through her is how I got in touch with Manali. So her work is also fantastic. Do take a look at some of the works that she does. So the three folks who are just phenomenal artists, who kind of moved out of Hyderabad, but they still keep coming back to Hyderabad whenever it permits. They keep moving back and forth, both Srinivas and Seema. And then Sohail kind of was in Hyderabad, I believe, but he is kind of moved out of to his native town. But they still actively participate in all our internal group discussions, and then they post and inspire a lot of people in this group. So especially Srinivas is one person who a lot of our fellow urban sketchers and other artists who look up to the work that he does. He does it so seamlessly and simple when it comes to sketches using his ballpoint pen or watercolors. And even watercolors, he does it in such a simple, elegant way that he leaves things half empty, and it still feels that it's a very professionally done watercolor piece of work. So it's just phenomenal to have Srinivas part of our group, and also the advice that he gives is quite valuable to a lot of team members. Sima is a phenomenal watercolor artist. She travels to various parts of the country. She is part of some of the prestigious watercolor groups within India, and she has done a lot of presentations of the solo exhibitions of the work that she has done. And she has also attended a lot of workshops herself, as well as presented a lot of things. So do take a look at some of the works that she has done. And she has done at least a couple of demos for us. We have learned quite a bit of techniques of how to do watercolors, especially the one which she did at Golconda was quite valuable for all of us. Sohail is also another phenomenal artist, especially the village theme that he does and then shares with the team is just beautiful. So do take a look at the work that he does that are posted in this Facebook group. So I've been going at like 100 miles per hour. I know that I've been really going fast. Thanks, Abbas, for recording this session. I hope folks can watch this again. But in wrapping up, what I wanted to do is I want to just show the screen again. Not just watching this thing is not enough, but I want you guys to use this particular page to go and try out various things. For example, Teoh, I want you guys to watch the 5 videos that I shared it out as part of the content, and then go and watch it and then try it along with it. In case of Marc, the dot plot technique is just beautiful. It helps with your composition a lot. Usually what happens is you tend to draw things too big, too small. By just putting dots within your page, it helps a lot. And these 2 things that he shows is a beautiful exercise that you want to practice. Judy's sketches or mini thumbnail sketches, again, I really love it. I want you guys to go and try it out. And the clean lines that she uses is just beautiful. Simone's use of thin lines and then the splash of colors is something that you might want to try it out. I talked about Felix's portraits of simplified sketches. It's just beautiful. So do go and check it out and then try it out and then incorporate it in your own style that you want to do it. And Yuki's multicolor shadows, I talked about it. Do take a look at it. Do check out the process of Enfriendly's style. He talks about it, and you can learn a lot about it. And Manali, of course, will be here to discuss more if you guys have any questions, and then the call Wang. So those are the things that I have thus far. So I will stop and I'll take questions you guys have. Any questions is game, so I'll try to answer as much as possible. I'll open up for questions. Any questions? You guys can still hear me?
Yes.
Srinath here. I have one question on Marc Taro dot plot technique. So, how do we get this on the live sketching when we do a place? Is like because is it like complete dot plot or it's also time consuming? So, how does that really help?
Yeah, so actually it's if you can see this one, it's pretty much a single sketch. Actually, it's not multiple sketches. So if you look at this particular thing, this is the actual image that this building is what he really wanted to draw. And to draw that, typically what you would do is you will start off like this, and you'll start drawing the big shapes, the large shapes, and you would do things like that. Is one way people approach things. Or people would sometimes they might gravitate towards the central piece of window, and then they'll start drawing the window. But unlike that, what the Marc does is he just puts simple lines as borders that you can see, and then once he does, and then he slowly starts connecting things around it. So it's just a single page, but it's just, this one just shows a progression of how he has done this particular page. So ideally, once you do this, it should not take a longer amount of time. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, unless I try that, I don't know personally. So yeah, thanks Srinath. This session is quite useful, and thanks a lot to take the effort to put all these slides at one place and send us a copy also. That's really great.
Absolutely, yeah.
I agree. I'm Kalyani. I want to know a little more about splash, the splash technique you were talking about. Could you hear that?
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. You can see my screen by any chance?
I can see the dot plot technique screen.
Okay. But you're not able to see my video, is it?
Yeah, I can see you.
No.
Yes.
Can see you.
Okay. So I'm going to share my.
Hmm.
So are you able to see what I'm showing?
Yes.
I can see your screen actually.
Cannot
Yeah,
see it.
Just show pigment, so
Mark's
probably
page.
a way to enlarge your video, or that could help.
So
I see
what
that.
I'm showing pretty much is just a blank page. You can see this blank page, right? So
Yes,
this
can
blank page,
No.
Kalyani, we can see Srinath's face and the book what he's holding.
Just a minute. Should I?
Yeah,
Where should I
I think you
see?
have to you have to
Acha.
move
Yeah. Okay.
this
Got it. Got
part.
it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Sorry. Got it.
so,
Got it. Yeah. Tell
so
me.
here's an
Yeah.
example of where it's just a blank page. So even before drawing anything, what
Uh-huh.
I did is I just kind of did
Okay.
a wash of a particular page, and after doing a wash of,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I kind of dabbled a few colors here and there, and just created this blank page as an example. So this page
Okay.
pretty much doesn't contain anything but just a splash of colors, actually, as an example.
Okay.
Okay.
So you start out
So
on a page with color. Okay. Mm-hmm.
right.
Got it.
So in the case of the Teoh's example that I showed earlier, can you still see the PowerPoint slide?
Yeah.
Okay, in slide number 2, can you see in the number 2 that you see here?
Mm. Yeah.
Okay, so here essentially what Teoh did is he did not draw this outlines to begin with. He took a clean piece of paper, and then he just splattered a whole bunch of colors around it. So what I would recommend is you go to his channel and then watch this video that says sketching with splash of watercolor. Look at that one. Understand what I mean by that.
Okay. That's very helpful. I always thought the drawing came first. I mean, I was kind of confused. Sometimes when you look at the picture, it looks like the drawing comes first and then they do a little, splash of it. That's really helpful. Thank you so much. Very, very useful session.
Sure. Any other questions? So you can also create a lot of the small things like the small pages, and then do quick small sketches. For example, here are quick small sketches, like a sketch of a charminar, right? So this is one example. So, and here's another example of a quick sketch of a different view of charminar, right? So what you could do is you could go to YouTube and then find someone filming about Charminar, and then you can say freeze the images at different point in time, and then take different images of Charminar and then sketch it out, and then later on you can try practicing. And you remember earlier I mentioned rather than drawing one masterpiece, trying to do one masterpiece, do many of these small things. So that's how you kind of hone in your skills, right? As an example.
Srinath, I have a question to Manali on the pure pigment. So when she said pure pigment, can she elaborate a bit?
By pure pigment, I meant that whatever colors you have in your palette, the more the colors you mix, say if you take two colors, if you add a third color in your palette in your mixing area and then you apply, you're already graying the sort of the brightness of a certain color. So I would try and mix it on paper more than mixing it on the palette. So I meant using direct colors from your color palette, whatever you have. I hope
And
that
then if you
clarifies.
have to light, and if you have to lighten it after you apply the direct pure pigment, you apply more water on the paper directly on the darker surface. Is that correct?
Okay, maybe I'll elaborate on that. I meant not mixing too many colors, but I didn't. It doesn't mean that you use it necessarily in its full strength. You will dilute it with water as much as you need. So in watercolors, and there are techniques where you can lift up color, but that's not something I'm very comfortable with. So I will not, especially when working with watercolors, I will not make it dark and then try to make it light. That's almost impossible in watercolors. So I normally start with the light wash. And then I will do a little middle tone, and then the last final stage I will just add a few darks. That's also another thing with the watercolors. The more layers you add on your paper, the duller it will keep getting. So my I try and work with minimum layers. And I hope I answered that question. With pure pigment doesn't necessarily mean in its full strength. You can lighten up with water as much as you need.
Yeah.
I meant
Thanks,
not
Manali.
mixing too many colors.
Yeah, I got that. Thank you.
Cool.
And also, you can search for this thing called muddiness of colors. So there are certain combination of colors that tend to make things look muddy. So you want to avoid those things. So if you just do a quick search on the color theory or look for the color charts, they will tell you what are the complementary colors. So you might want to pick up colors which are complementary and doesn't make things muddy, right? So that's one point I was thinking while Manali was talking. The other one was uh, in terms of, you remember I was talking about the tea, milk, and honey is where you want to start off really light, and then you can add the thickness, the consistency of water and the pigment that you have that you mix in the palette is an example, right? So you could go to the extent where you have the tube, and then from the tube you're directly using your brush to directly apply it as dry as possible. So that's very thick and viscous with pretty much no water to it, right? So you have this gradient that you can use. That's another thing that you want to take a look at as an example. But it just brings out, I can clearly see how vibrant these colors are, one that
Yeah,
Manali uses.
they're
And
pretty
also,
much.
my just a little tip is that though I know there are several artists who use Camlin colors and do brilliant work, but in my experience, if you can afford, you invest in good colors.
Yep, good suggestion. Yeah.
What are the other brands of this other than the Camlin watercolors you suggest, Manali?
I have just a few Camlin shades that are still left over, so I still use them. But I mainly in my palette, I have mostly Schminker. Schminker is a German brand, and Winsor and Newton, which is a UK brand. And I have been trying one or two Daniel Smith shades as well.
Okay, thank you, Daniels.
And paper? cold pressed, hot pressed? What some suggestions on paper?
Paper,
So
I don't. Sorry, go ahead, Srinath.
No, I personally I've tried multiple things. So, for example, all this, for example, these are all a lot of different. These are all handmade paper that I quickly use to scribble and try it out. So these are all handmade paper. These are not really that fantastic quality, and this is pretty rough texture. Then you also have chitrapat. A lot of people use chitrapat, which is also cold pressed. I also use a lot of hot press, like especially the sketchbooks that I have. I use a sketchbook which is mostly it's like a hot pressed kind of things. So essentially, it's there's no one thing good or right, but it's something for you to really experiment and get comfortable with. And there are certain things which works out really well with cold press, certain things which may not. And even sometimes the a very cheap paper notebook like this sometimes can produce very interesting, brilliant. Right. So, for example, like this quick sketches like you get a handle over how much water you control. You make sure that things don't fill up. The paper doesn't fill up.
I have a question for Manali. This is
Yes,
Shub. Yeah, I joined a little bit late, so I don't know if you've already answered this, but I really love your still life, especially. And I'm just curious, like you capture so much detail, like for example, the mulberries, and I remember like so much from your feet, strawberries and the Cape gooseberries and all of that. I'm just wondering how long it typically takes you for one of these.
Okay. I am a slow sketcher. I'm trying to improve my speed, but generally, given the world of urban sketchers, I'm on the slow side. And a still life, the ones that is included in the slide, something like this would take me an hour and a half or two. And also that time, I mean, 2 hours is quite a bit, but sometimes the washes don't dry so quickly. So I do other things and I come back. So yeah. But normally, even when I'm doing urban sketching, I would say 1.5 to 2 hours.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking, yeah, at least a couple of hours all of this would take. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I would second what Srinath said regarding paper. It's best to keep trying and exploring different papers, because then you'll be able to find something that suits your needs. And it also depends on what medium you're using. So if, since I do most of my work in watercolors, I do get a little choosy. But for example, the images that are in the slide right now, the spiral ones, that is only 150 GSM. That's a Stillman and Burn. It's an American brand. They have even color paper sketchbooks. So this one is the Alpha series, and this is just 150 GSM. But and it does warp because I do use heavy washes, but I don't mind that warping. And it's good enough for day-to-day sketching. And there's also, amongst the papers that I use, there's of course Stillman and Burn series, and I also use the Moleskin watercolor album. And in the Indian, there's Anupam, which they also make
Yes,
good watercolor
really
papers.
good.
Yes,
I
and
had
Anupam
good
is
experience.
affordable, is quite cheap, and it's really good. I've used that also extensively. And then I also use Fabriano, and there's a company called Travelog. They make art journals, and there is Pentalic, and there's Etcher. So I keep trying different. I sometimes use loose sheets, sometimes sketchbooks or blocks. and I'm still to come to a favorite. But yeah, the best thing, as Srinath said, is that you try different and you'll find something that suits your needs.
And I also want to call out, like, I also go to the other end of the spectrum. One of the challenges that happened for me initially is when I get a brand new sketchbook, I have this phobia, like I don't want to spoil the paper. At least in the early stages, I used to have that. So to avoid that, I just add this old computer manual. So I kind of start scribbling a lot as much as possible. So it really doesn't matter. So you scribble as much as possible, get a sense of what that things looks like, right? So anything that you can get hands on, you try to do as much as possible. You get the sense of flow, and then there are certain things that finally you end up really liking, and then you stick to it. So and then once you learn how to control the water that goes out, you can be comfortable with pretty much any medium that you have. But there are certain mediums, certain materials that Manali mentioned, or things I was trying out. They kind of really stood out for us. So. Right. If you guys don't have any other questions, we can wrap it up. All right.
Thanks, Srinath.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, thanks.
I'm still amused to see my list in the list of stalwarts that you have in this presentation. Thanks a lot, Srinath.
Thanks a lot,
very much.
Srinath, for all
Thank
the
you
inputs.
very, very much. Wonderful.
Thank you very much, Srinath.
Thank you, everybody. It was really
Very
nice.
meticulously done.
It
Yeah.
was great.
Oh,
Thank you, Manali.
by the way, Srinath, Kanchan is my classmate from college, Pune. So small world. And Michael was my ex-neighbor. We were travelers in Pune again. So yeah, I'm connected.
Fantastic. Yeah. One of the things I felt was when I attended the other session, I felt like we should be doing more of this collaboration. It will be just awesome, actually. So it was great that you were able to join a short notice. And you can attend and give feedback as to how this session was, or we can start attending some of the things that you guys. So there's a lot of collaboration that we can do across regions within India, because the Urban Sketches is one of those groups which are like highly non-critical. They are like one of the nicest people that you can come across. So this is a fantastic opportunity for us to finding ways to collaborate with each other. So, thanks for joining. Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll wrap this session. I sent the materials for this event, and the recording will be posted by us. Thank you, everyone. Bye. Thanks, Abbas.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Support.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Nanti ada yang